Basically, what you're doing is if, like, I was wearing an Omega Seamaster and saying this went to the moon.
But Smith,
Why? Because you just.
he had a Rolex, I believe, in his pocket, but he had this on his wrist, which I think was a pretty cool story.
That was in his pocket. The Rolex was on his wrist.
I beg to differ. I think
it was really useful back then to have a watch, and it was quintessential to then do all your fuel gauging and everything. But nowadays, me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your country or in your day. And now welcome to the new TouchMyClock podcast.
Welcome to the
Clockpit.
Yeah!
For once, something that sounds less dirty when we make it about watches.
The name itself of cockpit is enough.
Why is it called a cockpit? As a pilot, do you know?
What are you doing?
No, he doesn't.
Was it.
Yeah, I thought that was, I always think of something.
But today it's the Clockpit.
So yeah, we're talking about pilot watches today. So as you can see, we're all dressed appropriately in our amazing jumpsuits and BA captain.
Yep. Only one of us is really a pilot, so just want to point out that you two are frauds.
Oh, you're saying you're the real pilot? Of course. I wouldn't trust you in a car.
Actually, the two on this side of the table are the ones with the CAA licenses. So, I'm afraid, like little horological kitty cat,
you can fly drones.
You're a
You can fly. It's basically
fly
like
Airbus. You fly drones.
Yeah.
So anyway,
which if we
glorified
could
paper
get
planes,
flying in,
exactly.
which if we could get flying in here, we would have done. But
I'm a glorified bus driver. But anyway,
so come on.
that's what they all say. So yeah, today's about pilot watches. We'll talk about pilot watches. So we'll talk maybe a bit about a history. I'll talk a bit about what is actually useful complication-wise for flying, and then we're going to talk about our grail pilot watch. What we really want to get. So history. Who's starting?
What about a wristwatch?
Let's do a little
wristwatch.
wristwatch.
Don't break the tradition already.
No, you're right.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, I couldn't see it because it's jumpsuits. So who wants to start?
I'll go first. This is quite a unique piece in the sense that it is a piece unique, not in a very fanciful way of we got a piece unique from a certain brand. It's we made this watch ourselves, or we made at least a part of it. So this was an old Russian pilot watch that we were going to throw away or sell, and then we thought, wouldn't it be fun to experiment a little bit and add our own touch? And the TNT touch was, let's try to find the closest thing to Vanta Black, which is the darkest black of blacks. And we found you could buy samples of it, just small little bottles, and we thought that'd be enough to give it a go. What we learned during it is that we're not skilled.
I have no idea how painting a dial is.
No. And there's a genuine art to doing micro work, and also that actually a lot of value sometimes in watches are overinflated. I think there's a mix of both. I think doing this exercise was quite interesting to learn.
Yeah, it was fun.
It
was
very fun.
On my side, I'm wearing a Mark III Scramble chronograph. It's got a 7750 inside. This guy, you can find him on Instagram, Gas Bones. He makes these custom pieces himself. The box is amazing. It comes like this, like a military crate, like a Spitfire, and it looks really awesome. He does custom metal work as well. So if you want to get like a model of an aircraft, pure metal or titanium, he does it. It's amazing. Really beautiful work that he does. So yeah, this is really cool. I mean, and I thought, I have a pilot watch for the day.
I love that watch. I just so unique, so interesting, fabulous. And I love the box it comes in as well.
The box is the
really,
best.
So, very, very cool. Yeah, I know you like boxes. So on my wrist, I've got the Commander, the Smith's Commander. Now, what's interesting about this is that the first person up, if
you want to play drinking game at home, every time that Jason takes a watch off his wrist,
you get a pint. How cool is that? The best episode you ever want to watch. You just needed to see the old little Commander crown on the back of here. The first watch to actually make it up with Edmund Hillary was, in fact, a Smith's. And his company was bought by Time Factors. He had a Rolex, I believe, in his pocket, but he had this on his wrist, which I think was a pretty cool story.
That was in his pocket. The Rolex was on his wrist.
I beg to differ. I think there's many historians on that page, but this is great. This is a 300 meter. It's a really nice sort of nod to the original 29 jewels. I think it's a really nod to the original Miss watch, and I just love the commander name, and just got a really really nice look and feel to it. So well done, Time Factors.
I don't like it.
It's trying to look like a submarine.
I don't like these watches. I don't know what the original one looked like, but was the original one that went to Everest, whether it's in the pocket or the wrist of Tenzing Norgay and Mahiri, was it like similar looking design?
Was it very?
No,
It's called.
nothing.
They do sell
no,
one. They sell one called.
Zero
They sell one called the Smith's Everest.
Yeah, they have.
And they have a white. They have a white version, a gilt version, black version.
So basically,
and
what you're doing is if like I was wearing an Omega Seamaster and saying this went to the moon.
But Smiths make a whole range of different watches. But for the value, they've got some incredibly good press for the quality. Their PR3 is really pretty cool. So they've got some great watches for where they are. Another fabulous British brand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next.
So,
Okay.
so from the commander, so what do you look for in a pilot watch? What's really important to you?
I mean, the thing is from time, the use of what we use pilot watches, I think, has changed quite drastically. Because before, we only had pocket watches, and you had to fly the aircraft always manually. So your hands were shaking, and you needed to have something that you couldn't, let go of your controls to look at the time if you had a pocket watch. So this is when you're going to talk about it later. So
you can bring it up.
We saw that in our previous
this
podcast.
was
The first
kind of the
person
first wristwatch to really come out for pilots.
Come on.
So the Cartier's Dumont.
I don't know if you know this, but there was a little bit of a battle. If you go to Brazil and you ask people who is the first person to have flown, they will say it's Santos Dumont. If you go to the US and generally Anglo-Saxon countries, they will say it was the Wright brothers. Technically, Santos Dumont was the very first person to fly a dirigible, which means there was an idea that your vehicle has to be heavier than air to be considered the first plane. But technically,
No, they were doing lighter than an aircraft.
yeah, the first dirigible was dirigible, not just hot air balloon, but dirigible. Was Santos Dumont. So just to give a couple of dates, 1904 was one. It was produced for Santos Dumont himself, and it became commercially available in 1911. And did you know that the reason for this design at the top is so that it's basically an aerial view of the Tour Eiffel? Because Santos Dumont would fly around. He very famously flew around the Tour Eiffel. And so this was the kind of view that you get from the top. So it's very, very aerial as a kind of
I
inspiration.
mean, these hatched lines all around.
No, so the case itself. So you see these points. So when you look at it, it looks like a triangle from elevation. But from a plan view, it just looks like a square.
Yeah, I can see that.
And then there are more little details about this, which fascinatingly are based on the Tour Eiffel. But that was the kind of the main one.
That's really cool. And I mean, for aviation, it was really useful back in the day, especially during the war. It was a lot for the synchronizing the time of all the watches to be able to use them for precision bombing. And that you needed the watches to be on the second accurate. And this is kind of the time period. Oh, there it goes. This is the time period watch that they were during the war. This is be it here. And you need it to be very large. The strap can go over your suit. You have the triangle marked to see what's the top of the dial, what's the bottom. Large onion crown to use it with your gloves. And it was really useful back then to have a watch. And it was quintessential to then doing all your fuel gauging and everything. But nowadays, I have a clock on the aircraft that's synchronized with GPS. So I never really need to look at my watch. I don't really need to use a chronograph because we have time chronographs on the aircraft as well. So there's not that much. The only real complication I found useful...
You want to try and get on the plane on time, and you probably want to know where you are in the world. And
yes. So the real complication I find useful is the world timer. So we'll put some picture up there or something. So having a GMT or a world timer function, I find that useful. Because if you do some long flyouts where you're crossing multiple time zones, then for sure having the cross-track of both references is actually quite useful. Or you can even set it to UTC, or Greenwich Mean Time, or Zulu Time, as we can also call it. And that way you can be synchronized more with the whole world and know, like for example, you'll be a UTC +1 or +2, you go to France, Spain, etc. And that I find useful. But what we are going to talk about now is what's our grail pilot watch that we want to have. the reviews. Max, tell us about yours.
Okay. Mine is fairly common. I'm not going for a vintage piece. I'm not going for something crazy. I'm not because I think fundamentally a pilot watch is like a very, very, very tool-like watch. Yeah. And certain tool watches you can spend loads of money on. This one, I mean, it's still a considerable amount of money. I'm not going to spend anywhere near that on a watch anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I do like it because it's something with a little bit of a twist. So
classic.
this is the Breitling, but is it the Navitimer? Or is it the...
Yeah,
Yes,
I
the
think what
Navitimer.
gives it away is the classic look and the fact that it says Navitimer
Navitimer in the middle
in
of the
big
dial.
letters across the
Or
dial.
is this actually the Cosmonaut?
Well, no, it's a
It says
Navitimer. It says
Navitimer. It says
Navitimer.
Navitimer.
I guess
And then there's that you could recognise that from miles away. It's a classic.
However, this version is the one that went to space. So can you guys tell me what was the first Swiss chronograph to go to space?
Breitling.
Mate.
It's Breitling.
The first Swiss chronograph to go into space was actually the Breitling, and it was basically altered because the pilot that was on the flight said, "I don't want to have a 12-hour dial. I need a 24-hour dial because it makes more sense when I'm up in space." And so this was made for the 60th anniversary of this event. It cost about £11,000, 41 millimeters. It's the Breitling BO2 movement. Now it is a limited production, but still 400 something watches. And what I found quite cool is that they do have the exposed back, and on that back you've got a couple of details from the flight itself. So it keeps it at a very classic design, however, with a little bit of a twist. So whenever anyone says, "Oh, you know, this was the first space on the moon,"
Yeah, it's quite different.
actually no, the Breitling was the first one in space.
$11,000.
$11,000, and that's again new and blah blah blah.
Yeah, not bad. That's
There you
pretty
go.
cool.
Very cool.
That's pretty cool.
Well, for my watch, you guys were taking the mickey out of me for my Smith's Commander, but please feel free to comment and back me up to the Smith's watches to tell them that they're cool. That's absolutely fine. But my watch, actually, that I would be wearing in my Clockpit would be my own very fabulous BR03 Bell&Ross. I love the absolute classic fact that these watches are square. They're a relatively new company, and haven't been around for a while. French brand, founded in 1992. But what I love about them is they do make watches for divers, for flight instruments. I mean, that just looks like your quintessential flight instrument. But they also make these watches
six-pack.
for bomb disposal. And frankly, if you're making them for bomb disposal, that sounds a really good, really sort of good element. This is on a Stevio little strap, which I think are cool, lovely watchmakers, and I just love that detail on the back. So that would be my classic. And as I get on in age, I love this watch because I can tell the time. 3 o'clock in the morning after several drinks,
blind.
and I can just look at it
Blind
and
as
see
a
that
bat.
it's absolutely clear.
I mean, that's the whole point of the pilot watches, is to be the most visible possible. So it's a good attribute for blind people.
Is it really your grail though? Is this you could get any pilot watch, you would take this
Yeah,
instead?
I would take that. The fact that it just looks like it's a pilot's instrument, and the fact it's just so incredibly
really cool.
clear and easy to read, which I think is really important when you're making quick decisions, you're messing around. And so I think that would be one of my Grail watches, without a shadow of a doubt. I love that.
it's a very cool pen.
I've got just issues with Bell&Ross and the price of what they offer, but in terms of a design, yeah, it's
unique. It's
Yeah, it's
very
unique.
different.
It's very
And it's
unique.
exactly like the instrument on the aircraft.
Yeah.
Traditional instrument. With a traditional six-pack, it looks like that. It's a square box, and then with a circular instrument. It's pretty cool, yeah.
So, Elliot, you're the pilot. You get to wrap this up.
For me,
your Grail.
Very
pilot
similar
watch.
to yours.
I just noticed.
Very similar to yours.
Okay.
This is because currently at the moment I fly short haul, so I'm not really moving that many time zones, so I don't really need anything I don't need a world time or a GMT at the moment.
Yep.
But what I do want to have is a class S watch. And because I love vintage, I just
look,
go for a vintage
another
Breitling. So
Navitimer.
it's also the Navitimer, but it's vintage and I think it's cool. So they're not as expensive as if you get a brand new Navitimer. So maybe they'll be half the price of an actual new Navitimer.
Really?
And the style is just lovely. I mean, I love anything that's vintage. So at least you wear that in the cockpit, and the captain will be quite jealous.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the yellowing on this.
Yeah,
vintage
but that's
example.
just this example.
It makes it slightly look
Yeah,
dirty,
but,
but not
but
in a
a
tropical
lot of them are not
way.
like this. A lot of them you can get them new or stock or are a bit faded, but in a nice tropical way. And this one's a bit yellow, but they're
How big are
those
these? Were the vintage ones quite big, or were they?
That's a good question.
So with the sliding rule calculator, actually, could you explain very quickly? Because both of these watches feature some sort of sliding rule calculator. Very quickly.
You can basically use the sliding rule. So this part can spin itself, and you can use it for arithmetic, math, and time calculations. So, for example, you would take, I don't know, the 7 on the 4, and then you could basically find out what that multiplied or divided by each number would give you. So you can basically calculate fuel flow, time and distance calculations very easily with that sliding rule. That's the whole point it was there for.
Well, it looks like a damn stunk for me. 2 votes for the Navitimer from the old timers, and for the younger generation, it's the Bell and Ross.
That's better.
So do remember, guys, to
Subscribe.
and to
like.
and to comment. Tell us what you think of the show. Tell us what you like to see. Tell us what you want to see coming up. Get in the whole spirit of our fabulous horological community. See you next time.
Bye bye.
Oh.